Shalom, friends! Welcome to Orange Socks, a podcast celebrating Jewish creativity. I'm your host, Yitzchok Moully, inviting you to join me in exploring the soul of Jewish expression. Shalom, friends! Welcome.
Shalom, shalom. Thanks for having me.
Welcome. We have Sruli Portnoy in the house, in the studio. It's been a while since I've recorded a podcast in the studio, so it's good to be back. And it's good to finally be doing this.
Yeah, my neighbour.
We are neighbours.
Should have taken quicker time.
But you know the way it is about like things that you could do anytime, is you could do them anytime.
True.
So there's no sense of urgency.
True.
And I don't know if you know anything about creatives and the sense of urgency.
Yeah.
But we artificially created a sense of urgency, and so here we are.
Happy to artificially create.
Make things happen.
Yeah.
Exactly. We do. We share a community. We share a shul. We bump into each other often enough, but I still haven't gotten under the hood to hear who you are, what your creativity. You got soul. That's for sure. So when did you start? Let's start with that. Let's start with your a little bit of your creative journey.
Yeah, I started playing music. I feel like this is how every single musician starts. I started playing music as young as I can remember, but it really was as young as I can remember. In a house with lots of music. There was a piano in the living room. I often say, half jokingly, but it really is true, that the weather was so bad in England that you were always indoors. 9 kids, so you gravitated to the center of the home, which was the living room with the piano.
And no TV or minimal
TV.
TV. Right? Yeah, back then.
No TV.
No technology.
No. We had a video player, VCR, which there was very specific things we were allowed to watch.
Right.
My parents were kind of still in their, I guess you'd call it like about the sugar phase, but it wasn't really because my dad grew up traditional. But like the things that you would imagine young kids being allowed to watch, Uncle Moishy, Uncle Pinchy,
serious,
all the sort of stuff that was very, very, very kosher, but nothing else. So we played a lot of music. We gravitated to the instruments, and my dad was very musical. He was very much a full-time musician before he became a community rabbi.
Really?
Yeah, he was an orchestra conductor, arranger. He used to put on a lot of like theatrical shows, kids choirs. He was a child prodigy from the age of like 8, 9 in a kids choir in the London School of Jewish Song. And he later became a chazan. Then he was a orchestra conductor, arranger. Yeah, he was full out in it.
Wow, I didn't know that. I knew of your rabbi as your father as a rabbi.
Yeah. So he was that.
So that's the opposite of my journey. First he's a musician, then he's a rabbi.
Right.
So how did that happen?
Right. I think that happened because, I'd say that, and this might be my version of it, but I think that there was a lot less of this culture that we are blessed with today of religious Jews spending money on the arts. I don't think there was as much of that going on,
right.
And I don't think it was really sustainable.
Right.
And somewhere between that and his rabbi at the time, Dan Lopian, I believe, didn't think it was a great idea to be pursuing that. I hope he doesn't listen to this because I might have either got this wrong or I'm projecting some of my own stuff. But it was something to do with, it was very difficult to make a living for sure.
Right.
Not that it's easy for a Jewish artist to make a living today, but there's definitely been a shift in, I believe, at least where I think people have placed a little bit more importance in the role of art and the Jewish intersection, as you call it.
Yeah. I feel like, maybe I'm wrong, but that, Jewish visual arts are like 10 years or so behind Jewish music. And Jewish music is...
It's also behind.
Well, it's behind contemporary Jewish music, contemporary music.
Yeah. That's not a bad
and these days is not a bad thing, actually. Wherever music is going at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, there definitely is. It has been said that we're in the golden age of Jewish creativity.
Yeah.
Which is a good place to be.
Yeah. It is. It's wild to think where it's heading with AI, but that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, wow. So your dad, having kind of not well, in your version, not being able to, or for whatever reason, to be a full-time creative.
Yeah.
Did your parents frown upon you? I mean, did they encourage you? How did that? How did you end up even believing that you could be?
Yeah.
A quote unquote professional creative.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think on a personal level, my dad buried it. Like he himself, it must have come with a lot. The older I get, the more I realize how complex his relationship with it was.
But he didn't let go completely.
He did. He did. Yeah, to the point that I grew up. I have no memory ever of seeing my dad listen to music. Like. Zero. And then the older we got, he started, we always like caught him playing the piano on a Motzei Shabbat late at night kind of thing, and then slowly but surely kind of like, watch him get a bit more comfortable, getting more and more into it the older he got. Right. I guess allowing himself almost to get back into it. To the point that fast forward, 40 years later, him and my mum jam, like she's playing clarinet, he's playing the piano in a little Catamount apartment, and they very regularly play music together as part of their life. It's like it's an integral part of their, which is incredible. And again, this whole
thank you for sharing that he's come full circle because that's a frightening.
Again, it could be my stuff. It could be me projecting my stuff, and this is my idea of him having completely thrown it in the bin and sort of getting back to it. But that it is my experience of how I see it. He might not see it that way. That is definitely the way I experienced it. And
so were you rebelling at all by embracing music?
No, so that was what I was going to say. But it wasn't like he buried it for himself and he buried it as a thing. They were always incredibly supportive.
Right.
I'm sure my dad also was understandably weary a little bit. He got bullied when he was a kid. He was like a super duper talented kid, to the point that he was bullied by his classmates because no one likes a talented kid
in London.
Yeah,
Jewish school in London.
Yeah, and I I got a little bit of that when I was 13. I put out a song for this Victims of Terror organisation on a bracha, like using my bar mitzvah money, and I kind of got a little taste of that. Like kids don't like you're different, right? You're like you're 13. Why are you putting out a song? Like no one, So there's some of that.
It's interesting, but on some level, it's celebrated. It within some school circles.
Absolutely, yeah, no, it definitely was. But it makes sense, the bullying aspect. So I think, and my mum was super supportive. She was kind of like my first point of, if I'd come up with a song idea, or she would be the first person. I'm like, Mum, can I play you something? Yeah. I have very, very clear memories. As young as like 8 or 9, I'd like, written something on the piano, call Mum in, play it for her, and like gauge her reaction, kind of thing. And she was always incredibly supportive. We also, like Mendy and myself, my brother, we had also at a certain point a kind of a professional relationship with my dad, in the sense that he would be the rabbi at a ceremony, whether it was a chuppah or a bar mitzvah ceremony. In England, like the bar mitzvah isn't just like a little thing, like they make it into it's like a whole ceremony. And we would often be like hired musicians for that section, and he would be so there would be this, there was
That's
like
pretty cool.
The famous story we tell, because it was wild, was there was a misunderstanding whereby there were supposed to be musical arrangements written for the string quartet section that was accompanying us when we were very, very young, singing at a ceremony, and for whatever reason it kind of fell through and the arrangement wasn't there, and like 3 hours before the ceremony my dad was there just like hand scoring the string arrangement like by hand for the like.
Wow.
And me and Mandy were like, what? Like, you can do that?
You could do that.
Like what? So yeah, it was very much it was celebrated, it was nurtured, it was super lucky, honestly. And also, we grew up in the outskirts. Like, I don't, boy with the entire childhood, but the idea was my dad was a rabbi in what started out at least as a completely an irreligious community,
right?
And we were the only religious family,
right?
So it wasn't like growing up in the shtetl. We went to school in the shtetl, so to speak, but it wasn't like growing up in this like very, very sheltered environment where things were frowned upon, which is kind of the vibe I get when I speak to a lot of, artists, counterparts who did grow up in that sort of. It wasn't like that at all. It was celebrated and it was supported, and it doesn't mean it didn't come with its challenges. It came with its own set of challenges, but yeah, we were lucky in that sort. Yeah.
Well, it's awesome that you got the opportunity to get up on stage professionally from a young child, as a young child.
Yeah.
That it was possible. That this path was even a path.
Yeah. I mean, even on the most basic level, like I remember my dad asking me to. It was I think nowadays it's much more common in Israel, especially, but like for an under bar mitzvah boy to daven, Kabbalah Shabbos up until Mariv.
Right.
But I remember going back to when I was 8, or whatever it was, my dad calling me downstairs one night and saying he'd just spoken to some rabbi and they had a heter and they were allowed to do it, and I was going to be the chazan that week at 8 years old for Kabbalah, and that was like a huge thing. Well, I'm going to do Kabbalah Shabbat, like only 8 years. So on the one hand, I kind of laugh about it sometimes when I say, you're kind of a performing monkey as the rabbi's kid, because there is an element of that.
Okay.
30 people around the table, you're always no one's forcing you to, but there's always this kind of expectation that you're kind of singing. But yeah, it was an incredible thing to be able to have that opportunity and kind of inspire people without even kind of, you don't even realize what inspiration is.
Right.
You just
realize you're just doing. You're just getting up and doing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, yeah, as you said in the beginning, that before you can even remember, your earliest memories were already, seeing the power of music and seeing the power of, bringing people together through music and performing.
Yeah, totally. I'm very lucky in that sense, really. I kind of sometimes people say, when do you decide to become a musician, what were your options, kind of thing, and it always sounds so cliche, like listening to myself say it, but I really have never thought about doing anything else. It wasn't like this is something I chose to do, and as much as it's just like I've always done it, I felt very, very deeply like one with it, and somehow I'm still doing it.
Right.
If we do this interview in 10 years, who knows where I could be? But I'm still doing it, and it was never a decision. It was never an active. It was always just very natural progression of how life has kind of, happened.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm sure there were struggles along the way. Hopefully there were struggles because, nothing's super smooth, but
there were still struggles.
It's inevitable that it flowed naturally.
Yeah, there are still struggles, but I'm I guess of the opinion that everyone struggles. Some people's are monetary, some people's are, some people's are all of the above, but especially growing up surrounded by a lot of wealth as well, like a lot of people who had a lot of wealth, you kind of from a young age are kind of, if you're opening your eyes, you kind of tapped into the idea that like money doesn't really solve everything. At least I was going to say anything, but it definitely doesn't solve everything. Right. Probably does solve some things, but and therefore there's no point making your major life decisions.
There's more to life than money. Yeah.
Like don't make your major life decisions based on that, because it's definitely not gonna solve the things that you're gonna run into. Like you're gonna run into your package, whatever that is.
Right.
So at least if you're lucky enough to get to do what you love, then you've always got that to fall back on.
Right.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. L'chaim to that.
L'chaim to that. Yeah. So there was, as you, I don't know, got married, had kids, or whatever it is, there was no point that it was like, okay, now I got to make a living, or now I got to get serious about this. That there was any other possibilities. It was just like
there was still times in my life where I, on a long walk, I'm just like almost in disbelief,
right?
In a certain sense, that I've got this far, and you think about a lot of the people my age, for example, who at this stage in life, owns several homes and like I'm not a kid anymore, and it's like, and some of them have, education plans for all of their kids, and some of them for their grandkids, and I'm like, should I want that more, right? Like, am I essentially BSing myself so that I can do what I love?
Right.
But really, I'm supposed to be like that, or really, I do challenge myself genuinely, because sometimes it's like, it's like you just want to make sure, right? You want you want to check in, you want to make, and I genuinely do, and I always come out with the same bottom line, which is that, like, I feel super lucky. It's very, very obvious to me that this is what I was put here to do. It's a matana. Like, I don't think God, sort of, like, I don't think it's a choice in that I was given it, and it's even mine to just, like,
Right.
throw it on the side and do something else. It feels very ingrained in my bones, and I have to do it, and I love the fact that I get to do it. So
Awesome.
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
So what would you say, what is the function of music? What do you do other than play music? Like, what's the soul of what you do and why you keep doing it? Why does society need music?
Yeah, so what I do practically and what I do, and the first half I thought you were asking practically what I do, but the second half is much more interesting.
Yeah, no, it's not.
The
It's
second half
it's
I think that music, in a certain sense, is kind of like the most vulnerable we get to be as humans, whether that's the person writing the song or expressing the song by singing it, but it's also the person who's listening to it, whether they're someone who would sing along or not sing along. And what I mean by that is that essentially the way I think about it is sometimes to take some like really famous successful songs, right, and strip away the melody and just kind of like sort of like just say the words out loud, you'll very often find that it's kind of ridiculous, right? It's like, how is something that
Right.
cheesy, right, or corny?
Right.
But music kind of has this way of just like leveling the playing field and making this, like, all these walls that we build up as humans, and all these kind of like, I'm too this for that. I'm too serious. I'm too old. I'm too whatever these things that we tell ourselves that otherwise kind of create these walls, I guess, between us in terms of communication as humans, kind of get stripped away by music. It's this way of being able to, like the famous Hasidic parable that melody is more powerful than is higher than words. Kind of ties into it in that it's really something which is beyond. It's tapped into something which is beyond the everyday discussions. It's not like it's not about how was your week, where you go. It's something which is tapped into something more eternal. It's tapped into something higher than me and you, right? It's like we could be singing a song which has been sung by people from varying backgrounds for hundreds of years all over the world, and the thing that's actually connecting all of those people and all of those experiences and all of those sometimes generations is a melody, which is like a string of notes, a sequence of random notes. To me, I don't know, that just blows me away. Like,
Right.
It sounds like magic. It's like, even as I'm saying it, I'm like, I'm doing a terrible job explaining this, because it's kind of like, how do you explain, like, actually what, I can explain, like, on a boring, like, music theory level what it is.
Right.
It's basically a combination of pitches and a combination of rhythmic
But it stirs the soul. It touches the soul.
yeah, and
It touches the soul in a way that words alone, a string of words can't, and
Yeah.
the way most other forms of communication can't.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I've just seen throughout my whole life people in their most vulnerable. I say that in a I don't think it can be as a negative. I say that in the most
Right.
beautiful,
Real
positive
way.
way.
Yeah.
Like having those experiences through music, whether it's people sitting around, in a in a prayer setting, like singing together, whether it's people at a concert, whether it's people at Shabbat dinner, whatever it is,
Right.
there's somehow the inhibition is just like everything. Just this magic happens, you know. But there'll be a multi-millionaire businessman on one side, artist, a child, and everyone just is like, everything just becomes null and void, and there's this higher connection, as you say, on a soul level. There's like, I guess, like it unifies us on a soul level, and also the song itself, there's this like soul essence there. So I think it's just a beautiful, wild thing, and I think that if it was easy to explain what it was, it wouldn't have us all captivated the way it does, right?
Right.
I'm still in the chase because it doesn't matter how many songs I write or sing or whatever, or how much I do, or how many new it always retains that level of just mysterious, you know. It's got that, and I love that about it.
That's awesome.
It's it keeps you, you know, it keeps you on your toes in the hunt.
Well, it's wonderful that it remains fresh for you, and that mystique or that mystery or that spirituality is still there. Sometimes in my creative process, you know, I mean, for me, the most exciting is the idea, having the concept.
Yeah.
But then bringing that concept to reality is sometimes a real pain.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's just there's so many steps and there's so much. And a painting is one thing, but you know, a sculpture and a multidimensional and this and that, and as things get bigger and bigger, and it takes longer, and you get lost in the details, and it's almost the beginning and the end. It's having that initial concept and then having that finished piece that inspires that same feeling that you had at the beginning. Then you know you've done something right, and the chasm in between is getting it done. And there are moments of like, okay, this is I'm on the right track, or I'm getting there. You know? But with music, that I mean, I don't know really the creative process fully. You know, I mean, I think I do, but
you know, I don't think I know the creative process. I'm not just saying that. I think that there are so many, you know, on a simple level. Okay, you can go music first, writing melody first. Right, you just come up with a string of notes,
right,
and that's your melody. You can come up with words first. Right, you can come up with harmony first, which means chords. Essentially, you come up with a sequence of chords, and that's just like if we're really simplifying into like 3 different key blocks. You can start with any of those, and I can definitely say that I have one which is
your go-to.
Not even my go-to in as much as it ends up being the one that is, you know, I don't actively, you know, but I don't think there's any one any more legitimate than any of the others. I do know that the whole, you know, because when you were talking about, you know, conception to the finished product before, and I was thinking about, obviously, you know, people have talked about writer's block, and I do feel like the best thing that ever happened to me, I'm trying to remember who I heard this from, because it's definitely not an original idea. It'll come to me, but the idea that if I ever have what I used to call writer's block, what I do is I challenge myself and I just say, write a bad song. I dare you. Write a bad song. Right. As soon as you remove, but like really, like I'm trying to write a bad song.
As bad as you can.
As bad as you can.
Make bad art.
Make bad art.
Yeah.
That changed the game for me, because it really, when you remove that pressure, first of all, there really is something to making bad art, because the more art you make, the more finished product you make, the better you just get at doing it. But also what tends to happen most of the time, as you know, because you're familiar with this idea, is it's not that bad, right? It's like as soon as you remove any of that external pressure of like, I need it to be X, I need it to be Y, you know, you end up flying. But sometimes we need to like free ourselves of that burden of like, it needs to be something. I think that's just something that really has helped me a lot in my process.
When did you start writing your own music?
When I was 6 years old, I wrote a Shalom Aleichem, which actually at the time, we had these little cassette. You know, it's actually crazy to think about because it was so early on, but like even the most simple, tiny little cassette player had a little red button.
Yeah.
So you could actually record over.
Yeah, those old, yeah.
Like you could basically...
As long as they had those tabs in the back, otherwise...
Right.
So you put tape there,
and
then you could record over a commercial tape.
Exactly, yeah. So I would, I actually have a very vivid memory, which is wild because I don't have a lot of memories outside of music stuff, for better or for worse. My brother Ellie, actually, who was at the time working in a warehouse, was always awake very early. It was like 6 a.m. and I'd figured out
how to press those buttons.
That if I had stacked, I was going to say, was it 2 notes or 3 notes? I think it was 3 notes. If I'd stuck, put the A and then at the same time played the C and then played the E at the same time, I had an A minor chord, and then if I shifted the whole thing down, 1 white note, I had another chord. Of course, I didn't know what these chords were called, and to this day, I think it's less important what they're called, and it's a different conversation. And then I move it down again, and I was singing these words, because growing up with, in the Jewish music world, the beautiful thing of it, and this is something which I've kind of come full circle on in terms of the appreciation of, is that you don't need to come up with your own words, right? Everyone's borrowing words.
Right. And we have the whole Tillim.
Right.
More.
Right. It's like, it's like David HaMelech, like King David, like he's written like lyric books worth of stuff, so you've always got his to borrow from, and he's not alive to sue you.
And no, he's sharing it with us. It's not that. It belongs to us. Absolutely.
He's not taking us to court. So I mean, I've had a very I would say even complex relationship with the idea. How much of a song is a song if the lyrics aren't your like. But I'm now at the point where I think about the fact that what a blessing it was, in that if I also at that age had to come up with the words, the amount of pressure that would have been on my shoulders.
Right.
I may never have been a songwriter. It had this confidence, like, I just need to come up with this melody. I can do this.
That's what excites me. That at 6 years old, you didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And I don't know whatever the line is, that all kids are geniuses, all kids are artists, and over time it just gets beaten out of them.
100%.
So that, when did you write your first song? When you just did, because you didn't know that you couldn't. Kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%. So I was writing in Hebrew up until like 12, and at 12 I was like, I don't know about this borrowed words thing, and I wrote my first song in English, which was the one I was telling you about that I put out for my bar mitzvah it was called Together. It's actually wild. Someone sent me the lyrics recently. It was like on a CD, so like you print back in the old days, it was like printed out. And I was reading it, and it was kind of like a 12-year-old's vision of Israel's current state of affairs back in, it must have been 2001, maybe, 2002. It's kind of like exactly the same as today.
Right.
It was wild. It was like, wow, this could have been written by a 12-year-old today. So yeah, I guess that was kind of equal parts depressing and and interesting. But yeah, I was writing songs for as long as I can remember, for sure.
That I'm loving that. Yeah, that it was the education that you got as a child. It was, is that you could. There was no such thing that you can't. There's no such thing that it's not accessible, or you have to reach some level first and then you can. You have to prove yourself to whoever and whatever.
Yeah.
But this idea that, and anyone has, you can create a song. You can create this magical entity. It can just come out of you. Yeah,
it's pretty wild, I guess. That like kids have that just innate ability, like you said, like any kid can really do anything with enough encouragement.
Yeah.
Because your head is like a sponge at that age. It's like, I often tell people I haven't really gotten any better on the piano than from the age of 12 to now.
Okay.
Like, obviously I'm joking, but in a certain sense, like, what you managed to absorb in those years
Right.
is just like, is so pivotal that it's, 20 years of adult
Trying.
yeah.
Right. Doesn't compare.
Doesn't really come
Yeah.
close. It's interesting. Yeah.
So, as you went on, how did you find your voice? Or how did you, out of the whole gamut of, what music can be, how did you find what spoke to you? Or, was it what spoke to others, or was it what spoke to you?
I think I might be, the answer in short is what spoke to me. I might be guilty of too much of that and not enough of what is resonating with. I was always very scared of making art for the people, right?
Right.
Like the pop culture thing, let me make what's coming out on the radio, so maybe I'll get on the radio too.
Right.
Maybe to a fault. The older I get, the more I often think, what would that be like? What would that feel like?
Right. How different that would have been.
Well, not even going backwards, but even just going forward.
Right.
Like how open am I to sort of taking other people's, considering other people's opinions into what I'm doing. It sounds wild because there are full segments of the music industry that runs like that. 20
Right.
people getting into a room and saying, "Let's write a hit." Essentially,
Right.
what that means is
Right.
we're going to engineer, right? We're going to get into a room and based on things that have been successful, we are going to try and, cut this out into a science, and we're going to, that exists.
Reverse engineer,
Exactly.
kind of thing, right?
Yeah, and it's contrived, not in a negative way. It just is. It's contrived.
Well, that's right. They go in with that intention.
Yeah,
But at the same time, from the other extreme, music it's about being shared. It's about there is an
100%.
other, whether
100%.
it's a live audience or recording it and putting it out there.
Yeah.
It's very much in dialogue with the other. You
100%.
want the other. You don't not want another.
100%.
And so.
Yeah, it's a constant balancing act. There's definitely, if there is an answer, I don't know what it is. What I do know is that if I'm not 100% connected to the art, it's only going to come and bite me. And
It's only going
to come and bite me
Right.
in the future. Your worst case scenario as someone who makes art, I'm talking about, let's say, one specific piece, said art piece, Exhibit A, we'll call it, that you're really deeply connected to on a soul level. Your worst case scenario is that no one ever listens or appreciates it, but you know that you've been true to yourself and you're expressing it for yourself. Your worst case scenario, if you do it for someone else, is that no one listens to it or hears it, and you feel like a phony and you can't live with yourself because you actually don't like it yourself, right? So it's pretty. And again, I don't know what the balance is, because you're right. At the end of the day, the reason why, well, it's not necessarily the reason, but a huge part of why we do what we do is because we want to be able to, inspire people, and we want them to resonate with it, and we want so there's for sure a really tough balancing act. It's how much of that do you take into consideration, and how do you take into consideration? I don't know what the answer is. I'm still on the journey for sure. So
Right.
I'd happily take your advice on the matter.
No, for the most part, I do that also. I make what I'm interested in making. Within the Jewish visual art world, we talk about the elevator music of visual Jewish art, and I steer clear of that. I mean, the truth is, I have ideas. I just have so many ideas that, I was talking to a friend recently, and I was just saying that, thank God, I'm an only child.
No way.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
But my parents are Baalei Tshuva. Anything that I did in my life it's like fresh powder. It's like there's no I'm not, versus my children are now, they see my journey, and then they have to choose how they're going to live. Whatever they do, it's going to be relative to my tracks in the snow. And I've had it's just been fresh powder for me for my whole life. And whatever I do is whatever I choose to do, and it's wonderful. My mother's been, extremely supportive right from the beginning. So yeah, I create the work that I want to create, that I think will resonate with others. I think that's, something that needs to be said that I think others will hear. And, right now, menorahs, I'm all excited about menorahs. And last year created a new one, and this year I got a new design, and I
love this design, by the way.
50 new ideas.
Killer design. Love it. No, really.
Thank you. And yeah, like I do worry, like, what happens if it doesn't sell? Like what happens if nobody wants it? But I think it's more of a knowing if commercially, it doesn't quite succeed. But yeah, I know it resonates. I know that I know that I'm doing something right. And I'm going out on a limb, and I'm just doing it. So yeah, there is that, and it's that authenticity. I think also, there will be a large crowd that follow the pop music, and are just looking for the next hit, and But then there's those authentic souls that are looking for authentic music, that are really looking to connect.
Right. This is what I tell people as well, and they're like, "You must be so worried about AI, right?" Now, I did say at the beginning that this is a completely separate podcast, so we won't really, we won't
you can talk about
the AI
it.
rabbit hole.
Talk about how you...
I just, I'm not worried about AI because, first of all, like anything, making it your best friend as opposed to your enemy is always going to be, I really think there's so many ways that as creatives, especially as creatives who, I don't know, most of the creatives I know, they don't like having to do social media. They don't like having to do so many parts of what being an artist in 2025 has become, that first of all, AI can...
If you can outsource.
Give you a lot of time back. So let's just put that in one little, piece of this on the side. But really, more importantly, I think the reason why it doesn't scare me is because, sure, AI can... Why it should scare me, right? AI can, already, today, just completely deliver a song in a matter of seconds based on prompts, and it sounds unbelievable, right? I'm going to be the first to say it sounds unbelievable. I'm not denying that. It is quite literally unbelievable. I'm still blown away. I've messed around with it. I've seen what it can do, and it's nuts. But the same way that today, as you were saying, someone will turn on the radio and they'll to the top of the charts, and whatever's on, they like. Right? Let's really oversimplify. Like, let's make a gross oversimplification just for the sake of the argument here. There's person A and person B. Person A, he or she loves the things that are coming out that Top of the Pops radio station because they're coming out.
Right.
They love it because they are convinced, based on social proof and based on the fact that they are already on the station. Right. Well, everyone must be loving this, so yeah, I love it.
Right.
It's great. It's not a bad thing. It's just a fact. It's just
it's safe. It's safe also.
It's safe. It's formulaic a little bit. Let's be honest. Like, a lot of these things were brought. Not all of them, but some of them were created by a group of people in a room who were creating formulaic art. Right, and that's totally cool and legit.
Which I think AI. If AI is going to go after any part of it, that's the part they're going to go after.
So you took the second half. That's it. That's it. That's it. Right. And person B is someone who, it doesn't matter how many times he's been told by however many people that he should like this song. He goes after his own taste buds, and he's convinced only by what he likes. And more than that, he also is very into this idea of who the artist is behind that, what that relationship is between the art and the artist, what that person, and that's in its own way a kind of weird romantic. Neither of them are right or wrong. They just are. If we, again, I know there's many other people. If you're listening to this, don't shout at me. I know there's more than two people types, but I'm just trying to make it make it simple. Let's say for the extreme, there's two people types. So with AI, there's just going to be tons more out there for the people who, I'd be worried if I was a super top of the pop artist right now, for sure. But like, if you're making art that you're making because it's just, you feel that you physically can't do anything else, it's like screaming at you from the place deep inside, and it's like on a soul level, that's what you have to do, and you're not really worried whether people will like it or not, but you're doing it because at least you can live with yourself that you've done it and you know that it's real for you. There will always be people who will appreciate that. I genuinely believe that, and maybe I'm just BSing myself. Maybe I'm just saying that to myself because in with the AI looming, it is obviously there are so many things that you're supposed to be scared of. I just genuinely think that's the way it's going to be. In fact, more than ever, because of what's going to happen with the world, because of the direction that we're already going in, that sense of, who is the artist and what is their story and I think that's going to become more important than it ever was.
And then also the human element, the imperfections of it.
100%.
Yeah, that human natural authenticity that AI can't fake is definitely that's gonna rise. But also the other thing, I mean, and I really don't know enough about AI, but you could put in the right prompt to create a new Bob Dylan song. Yeah, but AI is not going to create the next Bob Dylan. Like it doesn't have that, or maybe it does.
Well.
But, it's because the prompts are take this plus this plus this plus this, and then.
But even if it can, and by the way, it's pretty scary how close it is, right? But let's say it can. The difference is Bob Dylan didn't write that song. That's the difference.
Right.
So if someone actually cares with any kind of depth what is behind the art, right? As opposed to just. Because it's the same thing as why is a print worth a fraction of a price of the original, right? Because the original artist didn't have a physical hand in it. So it's just in a kind of a weird backwards way. I'm just trying to think of a parallel between art and music, but in a similar way in that it was similar to something Bob Dylan did, right? But he didn't do it. Right. So it's actually a terrible analogy as I'm saying them. That doesn't make any sense. But you know what I mean? It's to me it's definitely it is wild though. It's absolutely wild.
What
it blows
my
mind. Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah, really, really.
Well,
crazy.
my thought is that AI can't do a mitzvah. What does that mean? Is that when we do a mitzvah, we're impacting the cosmos. We're creating spiritual energy, and my paintings are all about that explosion of energy. And AI cannot have that impact on the world. We're given 613 mitzvahs. And there's the Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach, and that every time you do a mitzvah, you create a spiritual cosmic impact, and as good as AI can be, but it can't do that. And so there's a spiritual element that it's definitely lacking, and because it's lacking that, it's by definition lacking. It's
and it won't have the right son to do that either,
right?
Because it doesn't have
soul.
It's it's interesting. I like that.
So I'm not too worried.
Yeah. Do you ever play around with it on a visual arts level?
Very little bit, but it's the other thing is, yes, they do have robots that are painting. That's for sure. I've seen a robotic arm painting. I've actually wanted years ago before AI was a thing, but robotic arms. I wanted to do a thing of a robotic arm and painting the classic paintings, and then take another brush and just painting over and just and then starting again and then painting over. Cool. But the fact that it's physical, the fact that it's tactile, AI's for the time being, AI is not welding, the way I am and putting these sculptures together. So I'm not worried. I think it's a tool. I think it's something that we can use, just like everything else. When photography came along, digital photography and this and that and all these other tools. This is a huge leap up. But it's questions of what you do with it.
I think also those things, it opened up the barrier of entry became much lower, which I don't think is a bad thing. I'd love it if there was, more people doing art because technology has allowed that to happen. Great.
Yeah.
There's enough room. There's enough room for everyone.
Let people express. Absolutely.
Great. It's so interesting to just like, this has nothing to do with whether it's exciting or scary or any of the things that people kind of like to brand it with. It's so interesting to kind of imagine where the world is going to be in, I was going to say 20 years, even 10 years.
Yeah.
You know, like the arts world itself, just for example, like in terms of AI, like.
Well, it comes down to what will be scarce. You know, that history is like aluminium. It used to be that like that was the most precious metal because it was so hard to get. And it was like more precious than gold. And, you know, the aristocrats and the kings, they would like their cutlery was made of aluminum because like that was so, and then the process of mining aluminum, whatever changed and whatever it was, all of a sudden became so plenty because it was, they were able to access it. And now it's just, you know, silver foil. So the question really is that what will be scarce? You know, what is scarce in a world of AI? And that's human to human interaction, a live concert.
Right.
You know,
live
a performer, a live concert. A live concert will be, and I suppose the less bells and whistles and the more intimate, the more soulful it really is.
Yeah, even live concerts are really challenging. Like, I mean, they're very, very often using auto-tune now, like at live concerts.
Yeah, well, all the mega, right.
Which is like just insane when you think about like, you know. I mean, is it insane? Someone would have said it was insane. I think it's insane because I just think it's taken out all of the all of the kishkas in the performance. But people would have said that, and some people do still say that it's insane to use auto-tune in a studio setting as well.
Right.
You know, pitch correction basically is what auto-tune is. What you're
right.
Where someone, if the pitch is here and they sing it here or here by mistake, right?
Right.
Sing it sharp or flat.
It'll level it out.
It levels it exactly to perfection, and people are already using that live. So even the thing that we think is still that final pure, you know, pach shemen, so to speak, that's still going to be left, is already being tainted with.
Right.
So and then it's so complex, and it's like, well, what is tainted? What is pure? It's like it's never ending, really.
But also, what is perfection? You know, and you know, there's the Japanese. I love the Japanese culture. It's so fascinating, so much depth. You know, but the idea of a broken vessel gets. I don't know if they break. I don't think they break it on purpose. But a broken vessel, they pick up all the pieces, and then they use gold to mend them back together again. And so again, there's a term for it, but it's now a full vessel, a complete vessel with shards and gold, you know, rivers, you know, pieces holding it together. They cement it back together with gold, and that's the beauty. You know, the beauty is in the brokenness, in the imperfections. Because AI can just perfect everything so perfectly that that's the human experience, really. Which comes back down to what we started, you know, the soul of music, that it's an expression. It's a real expression of the soul, and it touches the soul, and
long may it last.
Amen.
In its pure form.
So I got two questions for you.
All right.
Is who are some other souls that I should know about, that we should know about? Some other musical creators, creatives, perhaps that we do know about, that we don't know about, that we should celebrate and get out and listen to.
Yeah. I'm gonna go for friends who they happen to both be friends, but I'm not saying this because they are friends. I'm saying this because I think they are both wildly talented. And now I'm just going to have to choose who they are because I have many.
Say them all.
Two. You said two, right? Okay, Gilad Brownstein is a wildly... first of all, he's an actual tzaddik, but he's an incredible multi-instrumentalist, producer, songwriter. And he just puts out beautiful music.
Okay.
And you should check him out. That's Gilad Brownstein. Lives in Efrat in Israel. I had the pleasure of meeting him when I was pretty young when I got to Israel at like 16, and we've stayed friends. I've not played enough music with him anytime recently, but yeah, what a guy. And then just to change it up for number 2, visual arts wise, Isaac, you know Isaac Gut? Yitzchok Isaac Gut.
No.
He is in Crown Heights.
Okay.
And he does some beautiful... He does many things, but one of the things that he does, which is quite incredible, is he actually paints with 2 hands simultaneously. He's like ambidextrous, so he's doing left and right at the same time. And his more recent project is like different... I'm not even going to try and describe it, honestly, because I'm not going to do it justice, but check him out. Okay. Yeah, Isaac Gut. I'm sure you'll have your notes. You can tag them.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, they are both people who deserve so much more light shone upon their work. So, yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
And our last question.
I could give you a whole list, actually.
You give me a whole list.
What's the last question?
The last question is, what's your advice for young creatives for them to find their orange socks?
Love it. My advice to find your orange socks is probably to not look so hard. Sometimes just doing what you enjoy doing as a creative holds much more uniqueness than you're able to see. And
I like that.
Just really sort of tapping into that. Again, when we spoke about it, right, this concept, tapping into this idea that if at the very, very, very minimum you are connected to it and you're enjoying it, you've already won.
Right.
You can sleep okay at night, and you can die okay knowing that like you were authentic with yourself and with your art. And everything beyond that is kind of like guesswork, and it gets into like, sometimes for some people it's very successful guesswork. You end up becoming a millionaire for your art, right? But it's also I think just to kind of I think realize that what you have in what feels natural to you has inherent unique value.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Sterling?
Cool, man. Thanks for having me.
היום נעשה משהו בלתי נשכח